Welcome to the Channel Surfers. I'm John McCabe, and I'm joined as always by my good friend and co-host Jeff Lennon. How you doing, Jeff?
Doing good, John. How are you?
I'm doing great. Because we have a guest today. This is our first guest on the podcast, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about her in a
Kind of
second.
exciting. It's kind of
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah. So for the listeners out there, our podcast is a place where we navigate the twists and turns of the channel sales world through partners. We talk very conversationally, and we try to educate everyone about the experiences that we've had. Now, in regards to experience, today we have a very special guest. Her background is amazing. She went from being a reseller and moving into the vendor world. She's held very high level positions with Amazon Web Services, HubSpot, and her current role is Chief Business Officer for Liminal, which is an exciting and very interesting company, and I'll have her talk about it. But our guest, I'm proud to call a good friend, and she's someone I really look up to in the channel world because of her experience and some of the stories she has. But without further ado, please welcome Michelle Atherton to the show. Michelle, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Hello from snowy Raleigh today.
Yeah, it's the South is flipped up on its head
Snow in the
with this
South.
weather. Yeah. So Michelle, we're really happy to have you on the show. Jeff and we have about I don't know, like 50 years of channel sales experience between the two of us, and we're always trying to figure out ways that our show can help enlighten and educate our audience. The reason why I wanted you to be on the show was because I'm really enamored with your background, especially with your history at AWS and HubSpot. And maybe if you could start out by just giving us a little bit of a brief history of your time at AWS, because I've heard the story. You and I are both in partnership leaders. You spoke at the first Catalyst, and I was glued to that conversation. It was just amazing. It kind of blew me away. So maybe you could just give us a little bit of your history with AWS, because I find it very interesting. I think the audience will as well.
Yeah, I at that conversation that we had in Denver at the Catalyst event, I was sharing that one of the interesting parts about living in the channel world is there's no one sits you down in college, or no one really tells you here, like no one says I want to be a channel manager when they grow up. No one knows what that is, right? I feel like most people's story is that they like kind of stumbled into it. So I certainly am someone who stumbled into it. I had shared that I desperately wanted to be a consultant, was doing all the interviews, and it didn't happen. And I ended up at CDW, which was just this incredible throw you to the wolves learning ground of channel. Direct sales, but it did kind of cement my place in the world of understanding, we didn't call it ecosystem at the time, but this broader ecosystem that exists around vendors. So after a decade in that world, a couple of years at CDW, 8 years at SoftChoice, I was excited to try the vendor side. So yeah, I was actually interviewing for a promotion at SoftChoice at the time, and a former colleague at SoftChoice had gone over to AWS, and he said, well, you should think about coming over and joining me here. And I was like, oh, I don't know. We'll see. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, that is a good idea. I should think about that. And things moved really quickly. And so I joined in 2013. The reseller program had just been launched by Dorothy Copeland and the team. She was building the team out at, lightning speed, which is just, it was such a wild few years in the beginning. There was something like, I don't know, 40 or 50 people in the entire partner organization when I joined.
Wow.
There were like well over 2,500 when I left in 2020, just in the proper partner organization alone, right? So it was just unbelievable growth. But yeah, it was such a fun experience in that run, in that well, one, it didn't feel like real life. I would tell my team all the time, like, this isn't normal. Like, it's not, you don't casually run multi-billion-dollar businesses. Like that's
No.
like a really unique experience for all of us to have in solving these problems at this scale that companies just like dream of, right?
Yep.
But it also was just this opportunity like the builder mentality at Amazon, certainly during those years, was just incredible, where you had to be a GM of your own business, certainly title aside. You had to figure out
Yeah.
how to build all of it. And so just so much autonomy to experience different things. And so I had this amazing experience over that run of, I describe myself as a front office, back office person. Like I've sat in the seat of owning quota and selling and driving and constructing big deals, but then I've sat in the back of strategy and operations and program building at scale. And how does the support team, support all of that, et cetera. And so just such a unique experience to sort of round out, which candidly, I would say, and that kind of midpoint of my career made things a little bit tricky. It's like, people want to pigeonhole you as you're this,
Yeah.
you're that, and they don't like the answer about not at all that. At this stage of my career, it's become very helpful to have seen all those
Yep.
pieces. So worth the pain, but that certainly is what stands out to me during the time at AWS, just all the different exposure and the ability to sort of hop onto different sides of the fence all throughout.
Interesting. And I remember part of that story was, it was you got in there so early, and AWS wasn't even sure, if it would succeed. They were struggling to get customers to adopt, like, the whole cloud, infrastructure and moving to the cloud, and it was a little rough going there for a while, but you stuck it out, and it became just this amazing way of life, basically, for businesses.
Yeah, no, totally. When I joined, there, the rules around what you can say and not say, right? Like you weren't allowed to say multi-cloud, it had to be like, there are lots of rules. We had, we were very public about, Netflix and some of these other wins, but it was like, oh, those are startups. It's not enterprise. And so it was all about just getting those first few enterprise logos. And as you guys know, like you get, what matters is those first 2 or 3, and then the snowball starts to roll down the hill, right? So it was all about getting those first logoed wins, and certainly within the partner space supporting all of that, it was interesting because the partners that we were working with in the early days, now we know who they are, but like at the time it was this born in the cloud, right? Like those were the ones that were eager to lean in. It took years to cultivate the relationship with, the big names that we all know. And it was important to plant those seeds early on in order for them to pay fruit, but that paying fruit was 3 to 5 years later, right? So cool experience to work with those partners that were leaning in, which, by the way, is not unlike what's happening today in the AI space, which is where I'm at today. It's very deja vu for me.
Yeah, I was going to say it's very, very similar. The hotness of that space and how AWS was there too. And you think about it, like, Jeff, how many companies do we know in the cybersecurity world that they're AWS based? I mean, it's every company bases their product on an AWS instance, right? And
you kind of have to now.
Yeah. I was talking to a PRM solution today because we're actually looking for one for my company, and the CEO of the company started the conversation. He says, "Well, I just want to let you know we're AWS based." And I'm like, I'm not surprised, But I think, Michelle, you experienced something that, like, not everyone gets to live, and that's like this hyper growth, this hot product line that just catches fire, and it's something that I think is amazing about your background, that you're a part of that. Now, switching gears, Jeff, I know you have some questions. Let's keep firing away at Michelle here.
Well, it's again, my wheels were kind of spinning, and again, we try not to keep it scripted, but my first questions or first thoughts were that whole genesis, right? That whole evolution. You left from a reseller. I believe you were at Soft Choice, right? So what a lot of people don't understand is there's nuances to the channel, right? So having that experience on the reseller side actually ends up helping you dramatically when you go to a vendor, because you already have that mindset. When you first got there, I guess, did you go in as like a channel manager? Was that the original role that you went in at?
Yeah, the team was being built out. It all changed really quickly, but yes, I had basically a recruit target to go get resellers to sign on and to agree to be
Mm,
partners with AWS. And so that was everything from, I remember I had the Southwest, so I was talking to Insight, at the time, but
Yep.
like
yeah,
more of
yeah,
my time was certainly spent on the ones that wanted to move quickly. As you can imagine, the conversations with the Insights, the CDWs, et cetera, of the world took longer.
yeah,
But
yeah.
those conversations were starting as early as then. But it was definitely, I think the hardest or the most challenging part about that time was these like two 800-pound gorillas sitting in a room together, but in like they were 800-pound gorillas in different ways that didn't really understand each other. And so trying to
Yep.
bridge that was, the million dollar, sort of question of how do we
Yeah.
do that? And so it took a lot of years to sort of, there were things that each party had to bend on, and that did not happen overnight by any stretch.
Mm. And
No,
what's
I
amazing
guess.
about that? I'm sorry, Jeff, but
No, no, go
what
ahead.
I was just saying, what's amazing about it now? If you look at the reseller world, they all have AWS um, organizations that will
Totally.
help you as a vendor build out a marketplace solution, or will help you pass deals through the AWS marketplace, and they get credit, and they've built these amazing programs. So it's, I mean, from where you came from and how you were trying to convince partners to sign up, and it was a slog because no one knew what AWS was and what it could be, to now where it's like
Yeah.
just it's just everywhere, right?
Well, it's interesting, right? Just to come back, Michelle, right? So at that time, right, when I looked at your profile, John and I were at EMC.
Hmm.
So, right, we were kind of in the throes of it there. And we even talk about it in one of our first two podcasts. There was a shift that was happening, and watching companies like EMC and Cisco really didn't kind of put their foot on the gas. I'm going to say probably till 2015 they started calling it the digitization, right? Get away from the hardware. Like, they didn't want to say go cloud, but it was
Yeah.
in my opinion, this is just looking back, right? That was their way of saying, oh my God, there's a freight train coming. Like, we got to get our stuff together, and we are, get our shit together, so to speak. But what's really interesting to me, and I'm curious, right? So I'm thinking about you're at this incredible pivotal genesis of a moment with AWS. I get the slogging, right? I mean, people wouldn't people wouldn't embrace it because it was a big unknown.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, EMC used to call it the data lake, right? They were trying to build something. They thought they were going to compete with it, but I don't think they at the time maybe understood the broader concept of what AWS was building. That's just, again,
Hmm.
another opinion. But you said something earlier, and here's what I'm going to tie it back to. So here you are now, right? You went through that, and I'm a big believer that things kind of repeat themselves. There's not a lot of new
Hmm.
things out there, right? That's why, but the book Nearbound, when John and I talk about it, I had my kind of aha moment, and I realized I was doing things, and there was a name for it, so to speak. So my question to you is, thinking about what that whole process was and what you went through and the genesis of the AWS for those first 2 to 3 years, and you mentioned it. There's a lot of similarities in what's happening right now in AI with the channel.
Hmm.
What are some of the three kind of maybe your top three takeaways or similarities, that deja vu, right, that are kind of
Mm,
happening right now?
good
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, I think I said this before, so apologies if anyone's listening has heard me say this before, but I do, what I love about the channel and the space that we all work in is that it's not to let out the secret on all of us that we're not that smart. Like, it's not rocket science in terms of all
No.
the pieces. And I love analogies. So my analogy is the the partner playbook, if you will, is let's just make up a fictitious number. It's comprised of 100 plays, make up an easy number. And it's not so much that the plays are complex to understand. Any person can, reasonably can understand the plays, but the art and science between knowing the plays and then just understanding which levers to kind of like pull when,
Yep.
I think that's where, the experience, as you said, the pendulum just kind of swings on everything. And having seen it before, it's not so much, you don't come in and you just like, run the plays in the exact same way. So you have
Mm,
to have the understanding of pull when, which play to back off on at what time, which one to store for later, that kind of thing. And so I think, I think that was certainly representative of it. Having come from that world for the decade prior, I knew exactly what motivated, for example, the Soft Choice and CDWs of the world. Like I know what I was paid on when I was there as a vendor account manager working with the likes of that. And it was a clash between what AWS wanted to place, what they placed value on, because it was this nascent technology that was about migrations and implementation. And so where does that fit within these companies that are like not yet having built out some of those services, but they provide a lot of value in logos and whatnot, right? So the playbook, the easy playbook would have been like, well, just like dump a rebate on the F program in place. They totally understand how that works, but it wouldn't have worked for a lot of different reasons, right? So it was about, leaning on other parts of it, the education and the enablement, the helping them to understand what was being missed out, helping enable them with, here are, kind of packaged services playbooks that need to be built and run, and they can be repeatable and scalable. You don't have to be a Slalom or an Accenture to do that, right? It was that play, as opposed to just, go and dump some of the standard, playbook of the channel on them. It wasn't going to work, right? So I think those are the things that you live over and over again in these trends of, you may know where ultimately things are going to get, but what are you going to do in the beginning before you're at that, kind of full flywheel spinning?
Interesting.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah. All right, let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about HubSpot. Jeff and I talked to you earlier about our passion for Nearbound, and in the book, Jared Fuller talks a lot about how HubSpot was really at the forefront of the whole Nearbound motion. Nearbound is getting close to the buyer through trusted relationships with partners, right? And outbound doesn't work anymore. Inbound really doesn't work anymore, but it's the nearbound, it's the building the trust. And what he highlights with his stories in the book are, HubSpot kind of eliminated the silos of a company organization. Sales and product and marketing were not their own silos making decisions. They were at one point, and they decided it just wasn't working, and everything kind of merged into one. And that's how they kind of just, built out their successful, HubSpot took off. You hit another, gold mine with HubSpot, because it just exploded all of a sudden. I remember hearing about HubSpot, 8 years ago, thinking, I don't know who these guys are, and then got to work with a few companies, and I loved it. It was easy to work with. But, so talk to us about your experience there, and what was the general thought around working with partners, because that's how they really grew their business, that they embraced the partner world, and that's how everything kind of blew up for them. So what was that like, and what was your experience with that?
Yeah, no, HubSpot is definitely an interesting company to look at. When you look at the evolution of their partner journey, it is, like you said, deep seated, well over a decade. It started, he's all over LinkedIn. I've not ever met him, so I'm shouting out his name without ever having spoken to him. Full disclaimer, but Pete Caputa had and others had this idea around, hey, we're selling to all these agencies, but man, they could really extend our reach, right? Develop this program offering of, we're just going to go enable this ICP of ours to go extend into their downstream. So obviously, great decision, and something that scaled their business. So my entry into HubSpot, I think, is sort of in their more recent chapter, right? I joined them in 2022, I think it was. And joined them at this time and they continue to be in this next chapter. They just had their earnings report and are doing well in this next chapter, but their next chapter is really about what they call up market, which for them is just moving from, call it that, sub 100 employees into that, or even sub 25 employee companies, right? But into that, call it 26 to 200 and 200 to 2,000 employees. And for them, that's moving, quite further up market, where they're known more in that S of the SMB space. And so, it's a change yet again that the company is going through to serve that. And again, we talked about this, like you see these repeats of things, right? Refer back to the earlier conversation of that AWS sitting in a room with a CDW. Now imagine a HubSpot sitting in a room with a CDW or one of those types. Like there's still, runway to figure out like how those worlds are going to come together. Similarly, they're working on, they're figuring out there's a huge opportunity for them within AWS from a co-sell perspective too. And so tying all that together, and what is the motion going to look like, not just to be a customer of AWS, but how do we really become, this really strategic partnership with them and have that motion. And there's some things being experimented with on that front too. So it was, I certainly was brought in for my experience and expertise in what they call upmarket and those partners and what do those partners want. I think there are several elements of bending that have to happen in order to play with that world. Most of what's been built has been built for, sort of that agency business, which is still really critical. Agencies are going through this massive disruption right now too. And hello, AI, and think of the disruption of what that's doing in that space. So there's just a lot happening in that area. A big part of the work that I was responsible for during my time there is an evolution to their coverage model. So with that original ideation of the program, and having basically salespeople extend reach through agencies, it was set up in a pretty specific way to kind of sell on behalf, sell with, and there was kind of this dividing line between direct sellers and channel sellers, and it was fine for a while. But as you can imagine, especially when you start going up market, now you've got clash of like who owns and what about this rep and why aren't they getting paid? And so there was just a lot of things to unstick, both from the people perspective and program evolution as well. There's a massive program change that happened while I was there. It was part of my team. It was not my central project, but certainly lived in it every day during my time there, which was the ending of their lifetime commissions. When that program was developed, 10, 12, 13 years ago, this concept of lifetime commissions, and you can imagine you build up, 10 years of debt on it. Well, sounds really good, but you build up a lot of debt on that in terms of you're paying on things from long ago, right? So there's an enormous amount of disruption that's happened in that ecosystem. However, they're very committed to partners. It's very much at the top down. Yamini spends an inordinate amount of time with partners. It's a huge part of the business, and they're very, very bullish on it. So it was definitely a fun environment to learn. I had never been on kind of that S of SMB side as much, nor had I been like dedicated time spent with agencies. So I certainly learned a lot from that point of view. And it continues to astound me, to your point of like looking at them some number of years ago and going, my gosh, they've gotten to where they are now, and they still have all these things that they can do. Back to imagine pulling a few more plays out of said fictitious recipe book that I referred to earlier. There's still just this like huge runway of things for them to do.
But it's not fictitious. It's not fictitious.
It's a secret book that we all have. For the right
I knew HubSpot really from a marketing standpoint. They would use it for lead gen and promotion and. But then I worked for a small company and we used it as our CRM, and it was amazing how you could build great reports. It was simple and their support was amazing, so
totally. We use it today. I love it. I love the product. Yeah,
we do too. The company I'm with, it's our CRM. So that's a very interesting take on their evolution for sure. So Jeff, you have anything?
Yeah, well, I want to kind of bring it back to make it relevant, right? So I'm going to give you a bit of an opportunity to kind of plug where you're at. But I'm well, I'm really tied into this. It's to your point. It's not rocket science, right? We're not trying to catch something falling out of the sky with chopsticks, right? I mean,
Mhm.
we're really not. But it is about being able to reuse, repurpose things, like you mentioned, the whole playbook piece, right? And maybe you don't use 100% of that playbook because there are some changes and nuances to the business in the industry, but you're using 70, 75% of it at best.
Mhm.
Um, so the company where you're at now, right? You're doing, you're doing some AI stuff. I'd like to basically kind of have you share a little bit of that
Yeah.
with other people, because I think people are struggling around AI. I have my own opinions. I love AI in the sense that I have it right now kind of classified as an enabling technology.
Mhm.
As long as you can give it things, it's going to help you do things better, faster, more efficiently. Organizing and recalculating things. Most people think they're just going to throw something like, "Hey, give me something from scratch."
Mhm.
To my opinion, right? If you can get it to reference something, it's going to be much, much more powerful. But in the organization, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, right? Is it Liminal?
Liminal.
Liminal.
Yep.
I got it right. All right, let's make a little check there. No, but in the company you're in now, if you can, just kind of a little background. What does the company do today? What are you doing with AI? And then what I'd really like to help that you can share is where are you seeing the challenges with the
Mhm.
channel and AI and the misconceptions?
Yeah, great
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, so I think the most fun part about the story of me ending up at Liminal is it's very tied to partner, because I met the CEO and co-founder of Liminal in the partner organization at AWS many
Hmm.
years ago, 8, 9 years ago. We were peer managers. He was running tech alliances, and at the time I was running an SI team. And so we were peer managers, always really enjoyed working together. We're very much like the yin to each other's yang, and we're almost like this brother-sister relationship, and always wanted to work together again. And so we would keep in touch over the years. And so
Huh.
actually, my conversation with him, real like meaningful conversation with him, was at that event that you referenced, John. I was in Denver. It was the day after I had spoken on stage, and he's in Denver. We were supposed to
Yeah.
meet in person. It didn't work out, and he's telling me about what he's doing and saying, "I want you to come. We need someone to run partner." And I said, the long and short of it, I was kind of like, "Yeah, okay, well, when you're like Series A going for B, I'll come be your big P partner leader. That sounds, great." He's like, "No, no, I need you now." I'm like, "No, you don't need me now. Like,
Mm.
you got to go do a bunch of things, and then I'll come in and we'll scale and it'll be great." And about less than a week later, I called him back and I said, and this is like very much coming full circle on the recipe book. I said, actually, I take that back. If you're willing to not do what everybody does in the recipe that's followed, which is start a business, figure it out, 5 or 10 years in, go, "Oh shit, I've got to figure out how to figure out channel. My product was never built with that. My margin structure doesn't support it. My leadership team is all built out and they don't get it. But now we're going to do partner," which, let's face it, that is like 80% of the companies, if not like 95% of the companies, SaaS companies, right? That operate. I said, with my background, I'll come in, but I want to run all revenue. It doesn't have to be to start, but like let me assess, let's feel it out. And so within a few months, that's exactly what we did. Is I became responsible for all of revenue. Still had a direct motion in place, and we're kind of heading down that path, but obviously very heavy leaning toward the channel strategy for obvious reasons. If you put the person in front of revenue that has my background. And we've decided, as of last week, we had our leadership team offsite, and we are committing to being 100%, channel led,
Very
from the
nice.
very earliest of days, which is wild in a lot of ways because of the space we're in, which also hits on Jeff, like all this, like what's going on, the misconceptions. Like it's risky on the one hand of just trying to figure out who are those. They were the born in the cloud players, the second watches and whatever back in the, who are they today? Because this is
Yeah.
not only a new space, this isn't like CRM that's been around forever. This is new technology, new space with massive, massive human change involved in
Mm.
it. But I think that, or we believe that, and thinking about our product and what we do, we're safe, secure, enabled access to generative AI. We're this observable platform where you set security policy and rule all the models, the agents, the co-pilots, the et cetera, that you're building in one UI experience for your users and one backend platform for your administrators to get granular, fine-tuned security. So anyway, with all that being said, security, going after the mid-market in this space where customers need a lot of help. Like, this is partner all over it. Why wouldn't we lead into that? But you have to know how to do it. And you need to know that this is no business or no time for us to be talking to this type of partner, but we should be leading into this. And I've had to really, sort of fine tune. I want to be doing some of these things over here, but know that it's not the right time. So we're definitely trying to kind of invert it from the beginning and help cut through and have partners help customers cut through the noise, because there's a lot of confusion.
It's amazing. Yeah. And I remember when you first took that job, we were talking, and I remember thinking that is just so relevant. That's because all the chat GPT and the AI bots were like kind of burgeoning, right? And this is something that goes in and kind of monitors all that, so you're not going to have any kind of malicious activity going on. I'm curious. You sell to a lot of school districts. Were we talking about that at one point? Do they use it for like? Do they use it for that purpose, or do they use it for like making sure like the kids aren't cheating when they're writing their term papers?
No. It's been man, early stage startup has been, I've never been this early. I was at a blockchain startup, which was an interesting experience. This is just a whole different animal though, in terms of, seed stage, early days. And we've, you surprise yourself, I think, every week or month in terms of where things are working and not working. So one area that we've found success in has been in the SLED space, which is, again, words I never thought I would say. You don't typically think of state, local, and education institutions moving quickly on trends, but they're the perfect storm around all of it is, and thinking it's specific to education. There are schools that want to compete with this, and they want to be known, and they want to get ahead of it. We kind of use the phraseology regulated adjacent, right? Like, the stakes are high. They have to make sure that things don't end up in the models that get them, into trouble. And they see it as an opportunity to be super innovative and competitive for teachers and students that want to be a part of it. And so, we have 2 large school districts that we're working with and deploying, and and with others in the pipeline. And I would say, I don't know if I'm ready to say that we're ready to like put a recipe into the playbook yet, because it's still early days, but how pretty much all these deals have unfolded is this concept of, they know they want to lean in. They're going to start with sort of the administration, then it's going to go to staff, and then it's going to go to students. We're too early at a point now where students are even in the realm. That's kind of like a phase 3. We're sort of at the administration and the staff, sort of phases today, and they're getting those folks comfortable with it. So they're using, for example, we have a concept called model agnostic assistant. It's essentially where you can build these assistants using the multiple models that do different things well, and build curriculum or build plans and build, so we're enabling them to allow their staff to do really cool things like that, or administrators that think of like crazy scheduling stuff that's just so manual. There's like, to your point, Jeff, you have to feed it, but they have the things to feed it. It's just, they need to make sense of it. So it's those types of just like low hanging fruit use cases that are really taking off. And we actually brand it for them. So it's like their portal that they're offering up. So there's no confusion to anyone of whether it's sanctioned, right? And they can serve up all the different models on the back end.
Smart.
So it's been this really cool experience to watch folks innovate.
Yeah.
What's really interesting is, well, first of all, everybody's using it in some form or capacity. I call it Chad, for example. I don't even call it, I just call it Chad. He's just somebody else that I confer stuff with, because I will share certain things with it, but I have to be careful with what you're using with it, right? Because it's an open model. So you don't want to put certain things in there. And I do find it interesting that, other people, like when DeepSeek came out, I just kind of sat and shook my head. I'm like,
me too.
No, no. But to your point, it's, it is being used. And so I find that interesting. So but let's come back to that channel piece, right? Because you kind of hit it. And by the way, the playbook, when you said what you said, my first thought was we kind of need a test kitchen, right? Like Taco Bell, we got a test kitchen. And we're gonna take that playbook and we're gonna drop it in. We're just gonna we're gonna see, because we probably have to tweak it. But we're like, when you're trying to do those things, and the fact that you're going SLED, right, has a certain partner ecosystem already kind of established, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
So there's an education that has to happen with them. You don't just, hey, I have this, here's a pie, let's go sell this, right? This is how it's going to work. This is the model. It's a whatever it is. I'm not even sure what your model is, right? But it's probably some form of a consumption model at the base. This is how they're going to use it. And then, now you've got to get them to kind of go figure out how and that's the testing of the playbook almost, because you've got a wireframe of a play. It's just got to be tweaked to meet this new, I guess, consumption model and go to market. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think, and again, I feel like we keep coming back round and round to these full circle points. We were talking earlier about at AWS, and you're trying to work with the CDWs and these others of the world. AWS is, proudly, right? They're like Legos and building blocks that need a lot of and there's a huge services opportunity, but the likes of some of that traditional channel, at least at the time, didn't have that ability to do all of that. So similar, I think, in this world of what we're seeing in AI, there is a lot of that where it's just raw models, fine-tuning models, temperature checking, building from scratch, retraining, all these things. That's going to be way out of the realm of what the traditional channel is probably interested in doing. But for our platform, I think we're actually resonating really well with some of those partners and those that are in it, because the problem is, after talking, and I'm certainly not calling out this isn't about CDW, but just broadly speaking to some of these, and you would know the names if we were off air and I was sharing some of them. We get on a call and my CTO will ping me and be like, I don't think I really understand what their AI strategy is. Say, Aaron, they don't have one.
No,
and we provide a really, and I don't blame them, right? Because it's early days and they're waiting it out, and for all the reasons they don't have one. But we offer this really compelling story for them to say, hey, customer, you've been asking for, and it's a very simple pricing model. You get access to the top 4 models, unlimited tokens, $20 a user per month. And it's all set up where you can apply your security templates and observe all of it. That's a story they can grab onto and go and share with their customers. And so we've had, again, it's surprising success, like I said about SLED, surprising success gaining tractions with some historically prickly. John, you and I have talked off air about who some of those are. They're prickly partners to engage with, but they need
Jeff
and want. They need and want a solution to bring to their customers, and this resonates, right? And then they can step into it. They can eventually build custom bots and agents that they host on top of it. It gives them runway. So it's been pretty fun.
And I'm glad you highlighted that, because I was going to ask, what's the experience been with partners? Because you and I, we've talked. You've come to me for some advice on some of the partners that you want to work with, and we've talked about our experiences. But I think it's what I find with a company like Liminal and where you're at and what you provide. That is something that partners actually want to hear about, because it's something different. They could go in and it's a conversation, I bet you any amount of money, their customers are asking about. And if they don't know you exist, they're like, I don't know, but if you exist, they have this conversation, and it's another revenue stream for them to sell and to become that trusted, improve and add to that trusted advisor role that they have with their customers. So I find look, partners can be difficult, but some are really great. And if they latch onto your technology, it's a an escalator to success, right? The fast track to success. And the fact that you're going 100% channel, Jeff and I call it channel first, but channel first is the way to go. It legitimizes your business with the vendors, with the partners, and they stand up and take notice more about when you're that serious.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been really fun to build. It's just all at the foundational days, but I'm really proud of the progress we've made in a short amount of time. We obviously have a reseller program out the door. We launched an OEM white label program that allows MSPs to just go back to the schools, right? Wanted a branding. Well, imagine if you're an MSP and you can go
Oh
out
yeah.
and capture a whole bunch, and it's your managed
Brilliant.
service AI offering. And then, by the way, you can do a bunch of custom work for them and still host it. Opportunities are endless there. So
Yeah.
really proud of, kind of the go-to-market moat that we're building around the technology. The tech is going to keep evolving. Competitors are going to keep popping up, but I think we have a real unique opportunity with the go-to-market moat that we've built to go be very specific to enable the channel and kind of carve our niche in this very, very loud, messy space.
I think, Jeff, what we've learned today, talking to Michelle, is that she has the Midas touch. She's been successful and been with successful companies, and I think what you're doing right now is amazing. You're at the ground floor of something that's going to be huge, and you're just going about it the right way. You're just taking it one step at a time and not trying to grow too fast. And you're at the right point in the company to really dedicate to the partner world.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, we're super excited about the year ahead. It's been really fun to see the traction and to just know how, like, we have to remind ourselves all the time, like, even cloud is still early days. I mean, it feels weird to say that, but it is. Like, at the end of the
Yeah.
day, there's still a huge runway of cloud. And this is arguably, I think, more transformational because it's you and I. Like, we have to change. Like, this isn't just about convincing some folks in the infrastructure team to sort of think differently, but this is
Yep.
all of us changing our behavior. And like you said, Jeff, like leaning into how to use it in a way that's successful. Like it certainly will ride me out for the rest of the time that I'll spend doing this kind of thing and still be early days, right? That's
Yeah.
daunting and exciting all at once.
We
Sure.
all say that, and then
Yeah.
there's another horse, and you're like,
You
okay,
know.
okay, maybe just one more horse,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
just one more.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I was kind of curious, just so, and I'm trying to tie it back right to the whole channel piece. And it's interesting when you get an opportunity, really, when you look at Nearbound, one of the five, there's like 5 key takeaways, but the one that kind of is interesting is the whole customer success, right? Focusing on customer success and knowing AWS, right? The 14 principles, and it's all about the customer. And 2 of the other out of the 5 have to do with the technology, right? The ecosystem, and then leveraging technology. And everything you've said, like, my takeaway right now is you're going to build the partnerships, but it's really about focusing on the success of the customer. When you mentioned the MSSP angle, again, you're tweaking a playbook, right? You take something, you see where it can work, and the next iteration, right, is
Yep.
just, I can now help other companies to go leverage that technology to help other customers that you may never even get the opportunity to touch.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. I think the hardest part right now is to exhibit the restraint to not go down too many pieces at once. Like a perfect example of that would be, I love technology alliances, technology partnerships. I loved,
Mhm.
I have a lot of channel in my background, kind of that reseller SI
Yeah.
experience. And AWS is where I really got to cut my teeth on the ISV side and subsequently at R3, the blockchain company. And I love it. I think it's really interesting. And I actually think there's a huge amount of opportunity within, obviously, right, within the AI space to bring that whole world together. And we could have a whole hour dedicated to like thinking up 150 cool technology partnerships for Liminal to
That's another
pursue.
show, Jeff. Just be
Well,
prepared.
but here's the problem. I've actually done 0. I've had lots of calls,
Yep.
but the reason is like I
Mhm.
certainly do not agree with if you build it, they will come. We're too
No.
early for like we have customers
Yep.
kind of casually throw things out all the time, and we're all kind of trained to be like, tell me more about that. Is that yeah?
Mhm.
And then I'm like, I just was sort of curious if you guys. There's no one that's saying until you natively integrate with X. Like no one's saying that yet because no one knows, right? So it's an area that it keeps me up at night that I can't tell you about my top 3 technology integrations, but I also know it would be wrong of me to spend my engineering team and my partner team's time on that today. So that's like that art and science of
Absolutely.
all of this that you have to
Yeah.
balance.
Yeah.
Hey, I would say, I mean, not to shake my own tree, so to speak, but I totally believe in that. And being on the bleeding edge, it can be a real bonus, but it is, we don't call it cutting, it's bleeding edge.
Mhm.
And sometimes you're too early.
Mhm.
Yeah.
One of my claims to fame was being in a startup where we were building mobile apps for the compact iPad. We were just too early.
Totally.
We're,
Yeah.
like, if I could have taken that concept and just waited 8 years, 6 years, it could have been amazing.
Yeah.
Actually, not even that long, because when iPhone came out, I think in 2007 or so, the
Mhm.
iPhone 3, like, it just, I was too early.
Mhm.
But the concept is right, and people are like, "Oh, we want to do that," and it's just, to your point, it will happen, right? But you've got to solving the problem for the customer, I think, is most important. And then those things, I just see it speeding up. So
Yeah.
where, it took X amount of time to do it, 20 years ago, and then it took maybe half of that amount of time, 8 years ago, it's going to happen a lot faster because of the aspect of leveraging the technologies.
Yeah.
So, but
Totally.
I think it's smart. Yeah. But that's
Yeah.
awesome.
So we're almost at time. Any final thoughts, Jeff? I have some final thoughts, but I'll give you the first crack.
Well, I just kind of shared my final thoughts.
Mm.
I mean, I'm intrigued by the business and the approach you're taking, and when I bring it back to what we're trying to do here with channel surfers, right? It's just really trying to help educate other people in the channel, that there's not a lot of net new things, but there are new things, and there's a lot of similarities, and you can leverage things from your past, which you're obviously, a poster child right now for that. So, I guess my question would be, if you had to pick the top 2 or 3 biggest challenges that you see for you growing your channel in the next, say, 10 to 12 months, what would that be?
Oh, biggest challenges. Yeah, I think being able to clearly articulate monetization is hard right now. I have lots
Yeah.
of ideas on things that we could, like, the idea of like t-shirt size modeling of advisory services and
Mhm.
what I see customers asking for, but do I know yet that they're willing and at the point to jump and pay for it? And like, that's still hard. Like, I
Yep.
know it's
Yeah.
coming, and to your point, once it happens, it's going to go fast. But so it's like, um, I know how monetization is going to happen. I don't know exactly when, and it's finding those partners that want to lead in early and get ahead of it. And there are some, like, there's some really cool things out there. I'm super proud of the work that we're doing with Nexus Tech, big elite CRN, elite 150 MSP. Um, Amazing what they're doing and how they're charging forward, and they want the first mover advantage, right? But that's a challenge, right? In terms of lots of
Yep.
interest and intrigue, but you feel the hesitation of like, sit back and wait, and how do I help them? And we are a user, obviously we're all users of AI every day, all day. That's not necessarily true of everyone. So
Mhm.
helping them see what's possible, explaining to them what we see with customers, and really just packaging up and being sort of their AI experts to help them go build it, right? So not enough hours in a day to, to do all of that, and wishing I had a more defined, like, for every dollar of, X that they spend on us, it's what, like, I don't have that story yet. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge. Um, I think the other part, this problem has honestly been solved for us in some ways over the last few months. DeepSeek was certainly an evidence of
Mhm.
that. I think everyone's trying to figure out, like, Google's coming, go use Gemini for free for the end of your license term, and Copilot. And we've always believed from the beginning that some of those were going to, like, be kind of a race to the bottom cost wise, because it was part of their whole platform. But I think
Yeah.
there's still this little bit of like, well, is just like rolling out Microsoft Copilot going to be good enough for the organization? Is this whole, we made it bet from the beginning that it would be a multi-model world. I don't think that bet was wrong. I think there's
Yeah.
just, I mean, the DeepSeek thing was just so explosive, I think, for people to realize you do not have to be a multi-billion-dollar company to be able to, like, you actually can go start doing all this, So it's just that kind of tech shakeout, and like, should I just lean in with my Microsoft practice, or do I need to worry about the, the rest of the things going on? And
Mm.
I do believe that over the last couple of quarters, things have progressed so quickly that that's
Yeah.
largely not as much of a concern, but it's still out there. It's a little bit of an easy button to be like,
Mm.
well, if I just go push this, vendors, this incumbent vendors thing, um, And then honestly, I think the biggest challenge it's for all of us, the expertise just doesn't exist. Like you have to be able to help transform people and behavior. And I don't think that means that you need to become, like a transformation consulting business, but you do have to deeply understand the technology, help people understand use cases. Like you got to get in there and dig in on that. And there's just so few people like that meaningfully are using it. And it's getting better. I mean, I'm sure your LinkedIn feed's as full as mine with all the, the things that are going on. We are very quickly heading into the world. We're not heading, we are in the world of assistance and agents and agentic workflow.
Yeah.
And if those words don't mean anything to you, for anyone who's listening to this, you should definitely go understand what that all means.
For sure.
So I think it's just that expertise, right? Continuing to train and educate the channel on the opportunity and where they need to skill up to make sure they don't fall behind.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Sorry, John. Before you, I'm going to let you get your last word in, but she just nailed one of the buckets, which is you got to know the technology. You have to have you have to have some form of understanding of the technology that you're working with to sell. I think that's critical, but that was an amazing summary. So
and
sorry,
this is
John,
not databases and infrastructure and some of like you can like it's there are low hanging use cases all over the place.
So. Yeah. And we did a 3-part series early on with the 5, buckets to fill if you want to get into the channel. Right. And Jeff did a phenomenal job on really highlighting those buckets, but very interesting. And Michelle, I'm even more impressed after talking to you for this, past 45 minutes than I was before. You're amazing. You are a channel hero to me. I really look up to you. Like I said at the beginning, very proud to have you as a friend, and can't thank you enough for joining us today. We may ask you to come back and talk about some of these new AI, partner components, because I think it's very interesting, and it's definitely a world that we don't see partners understanding right now, right? But cannot thank you enough for joining us, and we really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, no, thanks. It was great chatting with you guys. Look forward to continuing the conversation.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Michelle.
Right. So thanks again, Jeff. Thanks for hosting with me. As we say on every ending of our shows, you could find us on all of the podcasting services right now. We also have a website, www.channelsurfers.com. And we also have our LinkedIn page, the Channel Surfers. So you can reach out to us on any one of those formats, and certainly would love feedback. If anyone wants to get in touch with Michelle to talk to her further, come to us. We will connect you, and I'm sure she'd be happy to help. But until the next show, thank you so much, and everybody take care.
Cool, man. Thanks again.